Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, members, and thank you very much for your attention and attendance here at our special council tonight at this extraordinary meeting about this peacetime emergency. You've seen we are being videoed and we're on YouTube, and as you know, some of the members who have decided to isolate and stay at home and will be watching us, and the public will be on our YouTube video that Jim's doing over there in the corner. Obviously we've got, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, we are spacing ourselves at a distance from each other as per the precautions. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. Apologies please, Sandra.
Yes, apologies are from Councillor Allison, Bright, Buckler, Bull, Martin Burfoot, Chapman, Donnelly, Flitter, Furness, Michelle Morley, O'Brien, Purdy, Raw and Slack.
Thank you very much. And item 2, public participation.
There is none, Chair.
Okay, interests? Nobody's mentioned anything prior to Sandra and I. There are no interests. Thank you very much. So we move on to the substance of the meeting, business continuity during peacetime emergency. I can't ask Sandra to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to members for responding to this request for an extraordinary meeting and for you agreeing to the terms, Chair. So we are in extraordinary times, and this calls for some action on the District Council to ensure that it continues to function whilst protecting the interests of the public, our employees and you as elected members. So the report before you tonight puts in place some urgent decision-making procedures so that we can suspend meetings for a temporary period. The government has issued a draft bill today, the coronavirus bill, which seeks to put in place some measures to enable business to function as normally as possible in terms of formal meetings. And it's hoped, I'll let the members sit down so as not to disadvantage them later.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it was just a brief introduction to the meeting and saying that we're looking for urgent decision making to deal with an extraordinary position that the nation finds itself in. The government is due to push forward a bill on dealing with coronavirus, which will hopefully change the way that we deal with business, and it will enable us in the future to have meetings same time, different place, that hopefully will enable you to participate remotely at meetings of the council. At the moment, that law does not exist. We cannot have meetings unless all councillors are present in the meeting chamber, otherwise decisions will be unlawful. We're also conscious of the fact that this is a very dynamic environment and we have to respond accordingly. And there may be times when our human resources are diminished because people are self-isolating or in the unfortunate position where they may have to deal with the virus. Yet we are a public service and we have to continue as so for as long as we possibly can. So the delegation arrangements that you have before you, for those of you with memory, are similar to those that we would introduce in the interregnum before all-out council elections, where we have to put in place certain delegation arrangements to enable our continuous. And the first one is in relation to meetings that would otherwise be taken by our policy committees. This is in the Constitution already, and we have urgent decision-making delegations which would enable us to make a decision where it's not possible to call a meeting of a policy committee. This would now be in place together with a suspension of all meetings of our policy committees. And the slight change in the current delegation is that we're enabling decision-making by the Chief Executive and or relevant members of the corporate leadership team. Currently that rests with the Chief Executive. There is no resilience. The Chief Executive has to self-isolate, therefore we're extending it to members of CLT depending on their subject matter. Consultation is dependent on the officer consulting with the relevant policy committee chair, and if the matter that needs to be decided upon is based on a particular ward, that will also include consultation with ward members. The second one is delegation from our planning committee, again to officers of this council. As you know, meetings of the planning committee meet every 4 weeks. They're highly visible, they attract a lot of people coming to our meetings, And I think given the recent government guidance, we should try to avoid placing any unnecessary risk of members who are involved in that particular process. So here the delegation is to our Principal Planning Officer, Development Manager and Head of Regulatory Services. They will make decisions when required, and when required means when they have to be taken, because we don't want anyone to appeal for non-determination just for the fact that we haven't put alternative arrangements in place. That will also be done in consultation with the relevant ward members and the Chairman of the Planning Committee. I've had lots of feedback today from members who aren't able to be with us, and I think it's worthwhile expanding what we mean by delegation arrangements so that you have a clear understanding of what it will look like. If there is a planning application that requires determination, otherwise it would be out of time, a member of the planning committee, a member of the development management team will consult the relevant ward members. Their decision can't be fettered, which means you are unable to instruct an officer to make a particular decision in a particular way. That planning officer has to use their professional judgment to balance the material considerations against the policy framework and propose to you what they believe is to be a reasonable decision in all the circumstances. So they will be consulting you, and as a ward member you may wish to bring matters to their attention that they may not be aware of from a community perspective, which you do now. But if there's a case where two members agree and one doesn't, the officer still has to make a decision in good faith, and they will be in a position where they have to listen to what you have to say, but they still have to make a reasonable decision in all the circumstances. So it's not a case that delegation is to make everyone happy. It's to make the best decision possible, and the best decision that's reasonable in all the circumstances. It's not a consultation for a unanimous opinion moving forward. But it's also not an opportunity to make important and significant decisions without member involvement. I think we can all think of a particular planning application which has not reached the planning committee stage because we're still going through the evaluation stage. This period of delegation is not going to be used in a way to make high-profile decisions without full member involvement. And in the report I've talked about a scenario where the public, quite rightly, have the expectation that significant planning applications that might have a significant impact on their community are not delegated to officers. That's not what we're here for. We're here to make routine and relatively safe decisions, and the important ones will come to you as members. Until the government has clarified its thoughts and given legislation as to how we might conduct a planning meeting with all members present, either remotely or in the council chamber, we're going to have to take a risk-based decision on when to call a planning committee to make that decision. However, we are in continual dialogue with developers so they know where their particular application is in the processing chain at all times, and we work very hard on getting an agreement on any potential delay so that everyone is on board. And I'm sure during questions you will probably name one particular planning application, but I think it's fair to highlight now that this scheme of delegation is not to make those significant decisions. It's a practical route to enable us to continue to function. The other element is licensing, which, as you know, can operate in a quasi-judicial setting because there are the rights of individuals. We have never delegated to date any matter relating to taxi and private hire vehicles, but we are able to in law. So we are introducing for the first time full decision-making in licensing to avoid the need for an appeal hearing. However, and until something changes, we can't delegate alcohol, employment or gambling licensing decisions. They would have to come to a hearing. I've had a recent flash email this afternoon from the licensing and regulatory boards who are lobbying very hard that the licensing regime should keep intact and that we should have remote hearings. I think courts are looking to do something very similar where they won't be relying on evidence in person. That will apply to our licensing hearings in due course. So this may be the first report on a series in that regard. There then remains items which only council at the moment can deal with. At the moment they are not able to be delegated, and they are listed for you in the appendix. And they're the pretty big areas Again, the public would never expect an officer of the council to set the council's budget. They're so important, they are reserved to the council in its full assembly, and they will continue to be so. And obviously we'll have to keep a watching brief on this situation to work out how to make those decisions. However, I am hopeful that the legislation will enable us to continue to have important meetings where you can participate remotely. And obviously, as these matters emerge, we may need to amend the way that we do things around here. So I'm asking for delegated authority to the Chief Executive and myself to make those proposals, obviously with remote participation, probably by email, so that we can put this in place. But I think the most important thing, and that's been confirmed by emails from the members that aren't able to be here tonight, we want full transparency. So all the decisions that are made by way of delegated authority will be recorded. We insist that all decisions are recorded, and we will be publishing them on the internet. Several members have asked for timescales to be introduced to that. Can you just hold back on that at the moment? We're learning how to do these things, and I wouldn't want us to set out to fail. So I'd rather you didn't impose timescales for the publication of results. Allow us to do that as quickly as we possibly can in the circumstances. So I hope that's a skip through, Chair. I have had some feedback from Councillor Purdy, Leader of the Council, and he's asked me to read out a statement from him. He isn't with us tonight, but if he can bear with me, please. So, dear members, following last weekend's message from government re actions required by the public in respect of the spread of COVID-19, it was evident that action was required insofar as business of the council was concerned. Therefore, at 7:30 a.m. on Monday last, I had a conversation with Paul to the effect that we had to close meetings down and move to a system of delegation. I felt this decision was necessary for the protection of our valuable staff and members. I liaised with Councillors Mike Ratcliffe and Steve Flitter on this decision and received their full support. In not only following government advice to self-isolate myself, I do so on a personal level due to a chronic underlying health issue of my wife. And I am sure you will understand, therefore, why I'm not with you tonight. I have every confidence in Paul, Sandra, CLT and staff that they will do their very best in such trying circumstances, and it behoves us all to follow government advice in order to protect the vulnerable from this awful virus. Myself and Councillor Sue Hobson are in constant touch with Paul as leader and deputy leader, and I hereby promise to keep you all informed of any decisions that are made or likely to be made during this process. Good luck with the meeting and stay safe. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, thank you, Sandra, for your comprehensive report and also for already answering many questions from members about this process. I am happy to move the motion. Certain members of our council have made the personal decision not to attend tonight, following government advice or by being in self-isolation. I am sure we all wish them well. The decision to suspend our council business and delegate powers to our officers is not one to be taken lightly, but serious times demand a serious response. I hope that at this challenging time, members will join together to work with our officers and support this motion. I am very happy to see that any decisions made by officers in this emergency situation will be notified to members as soon as possible. The way that local communities are supporting each other during this crisis shows the best of our values and the goodness of human nature. Finally, I would like to thank all Derbyshire Dales District Council employees, especially the dedicated people on the front line in our communities. We must recognise the hard work and commitment of our officers, our members, our parish and town councils, as well as the other partner organisations we work for, such as the County Council. We will get through this unprecedented global pandemic, and I look forward to us all working together again as soon as we are able to.
Councillor Atkin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second the recommendations, but I will reserve the right to speak later.
Okay, other members, it's been proposed and seconded, but any other comments? Councillor Burford.
I do have to bring up, I think, the question of planning planning committee. I suppose my major concern is that the major contentious planning applications, granted they will be done by the planning committee and not delegated, but I suppose what I'm thinking about is it's the significant opposition that there will be, and I think we all know which one we're talking about. There will be significant opposition, and how will that be heard?
Sandra, I think, can answer that.
I can answer it, and I think there's a solution, but as it only came out this afternoon, I honestly haven't had time to digest it. But in the latest proposals that's come out, one of the headlines is enabling public participation remotely at planning committees. So I think if you can allow us time to actually digest what those proposals are, I'll be able to answer that in the fullness of time, possibly tomorrow, if not early next week. I know there are plans, I just don't know what they are.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you.
Do you want the mic?
Well,
Okay, yeah, it's for the tape, really.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm in support of the motion, but the issue I do have, and just 3 questions really. Sandra, thank you for what you've just said there, it's very good. But you mentioned about keeping the developers informed of what we're doing. Can I just confirm that there will still be correspondence relating to all new and ongoing applications will still be inputted onto the planning portal to ensure that residents and communities are kept updated as to what's going on? We realise that there are developers, but there are residents and communities that need to be updated. Secondly, will officers inform members of material planning changes in particular planning applications when they are profitable? And finally, should an officer make a recommendation, will there still be a reasonable period of time to enable interested parties to comment before a final determination is made upon that planning application? Thank you.
Sandra.
In the first 2 questions, the answer is yes. We're undertaking to do that. On the third one, that's really complicated. And at this time, it's not part of our proposals. I think one of the reasons that we're moving into this type of decision making is to make it easier and speedier and not introduce an additional burden whilst we face the prospect of reducing human resources. We have to face facts that we may lose significant numbers of staff whilst in isolation, hopefully not off on sick leave, and again, I wouldn't like to set us up to fail. Would you allow me to take that back for serious consideration rather than accept that it's a given tonight, Councillor Wayne?
Yes, that's fine. I'll just add that
Yes.
Obviously it's important that with some planning applications that people have a right to give a view after a decision has been made before the determination has been, the final determination has been. But yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question to ask: how many planning applications are likely to be reaching a point where a decision has to be made over the next 2 months or so?
Sandra.
I can't give you a definitive answer on that, but we had 4 or 5 applications scheduled for the next planning committee, which will automatically come very close to that 8-week expiry. I can give you some figures when I can liaise tomorrow. Thank you.
Councillor Salt.
Thank you, Chair. I support the motion. I've got full confidence in officers in planning and other areas. I think the level of scrutiny that planning already receives is going to be doubled, if not trebled, as a result of delegated power. So people really will keep their eye on exactly what's going off. And I think there's going to be a lot of feedback afterwards, I'm sure, and any wrong footing will be magnified, highlighted, thrown and ruled through the press as best it can be to everybody's advantage who's using it. So I've got every confidence in the officers to do things properly and be transparent. I just have one quick question. The powers that we're looking to move over tonight, is there a review point in the future where we will have a look at whether they still need to be in place?
Sandra.
I drafted this report yesterday without any idea of when the bill was about to go through Westminster. I've had the first draft today, so I think this is a really dynamic environment. And sure, as soon as we have clarity, we'll come back to all members if we need to change our position. And I'm honestly hopeful that we will be able to resume some kind of open and transparent democracy where members can have their rightful involvement. But at this moment in time, we have to protect our position.
Councillor Bruce.
I do support the motion. I've got a question. Assuming that legal powers are granted for remote working and remote involvement in council meetings, do we have a off-the-shelf technology solution that we could deploy? There's lots of industry standards, and I think it'd be worth there being some investigation into that and some clarity on bringing that to bear very quickly so that we can re-establish democratic process locally.
Sandra.
Tomorrow we're trialling a telecommunications platform for full conferencing facilities, and our ICT team are working on video conferencing.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody else like to make a contribution tonight? Okay. Councillor Morley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm reassured by what you've told us about planning. That was the one area I was a bit unsure about, and I'd like to thank you very much indeed for the rapidity with which you've reacted to this and pulled this very comprehensive brief and meeting together. Thank you very much indeed to you and to Paul.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you. Well, it's been moved and seconded for approval. Is it going to be recorded? Or?
No.
Okay. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Well, members, thank you. Just before we leave and say goodbye to everyone on YouTube, can I just thank all members, both present here tonight. Thank you very much. We needed a quorum to be able to pass this motion, but also to those absent who hopefully are watching us on YouTube. We all make a huge contribution to, everybody makes a huge contribution to their wards, and you can just see by the emails of the last couple of days what's going on, and that's a great fillip to us all. But also, I think all of us would like to thank all the staff, not just in these rooms in this town hall, but all over the Derbyshire Dales, who are doing so much good work to keep the whole of the people in Derbyshire Dales safe and well. Thank you very much to them. I think, could we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
How happy with that?